Shaw's actions on the final day solidified the respect his men already had for him. 2 weeks after the battle, Albanus Fisher, a sergeant in the 44th segment, I still feel more eager for the struggle than I ever yet have. For I now wish to have revenge for our gallant colonel. J.R. Miller once observed, "The only thing that walks back from the tomb with the mourners and refuses to be buried in this character of a man. This is true. What a man is, survives him. It can never be buried." Shaw's character, strong to the last, had communicated a level of respect to his men that lived beyond him. A leader's good character builds trust among his followers, but when a leader breaks trust, he forfeits his ability to lead. That's the law of solid ground. Box. The only thing that walks back from the tomb with the mourners and refuses to be buried is the character of a man. This is true. What a man is survives him. It can never be buried. J.R. Miller. The beginning of the end of trust. Earlier I mentioned Watergate and the various public scandals that have undermined the public's confidence in leaders during the last 30 years. But the event that I believe began to erode the public's faith in the nation's leaders and develop strong skepticism in the country was the war in Vietnam. The action taken by members of the Johnson administration, the mistakes made by Robert McNamara, and their unwillingness to face and admit those mistakes broke trust with the American people. They violated the law of solid ground, and the United States has been suffering from the repercussions ever since. Vietnam was already at war with President Kennedy, and Robert McNamara, his Secretary of Defense, took office in January of 1961. The Vietnam region had been a battleground for decades, and the United States got involved in the mid-1950s when President Eisenhower sent a small number of U.S. troops to Vietnam as advisors. When Kennedy took office, he continued Eisenhower's policy. It was always his intention to let the South Vietnam fight and win their own war. But over time, the United States became increasingly involved. Before the war was over, more than 500,000 American troops at one time served in Vietnam. If you experienced those war years, you may be surprised to know that in the beginning, American support for the war was very strong, even as the number of troops being sent overseas rapidly increased and the casualties mounted. By 1966, more than 200,000 Americans had been sent to Vietnam. Yet 2/3 of all Americans surveyed by Lewis Harris believed that Vietnam was a place where the United States should stand and fight communism. And most people expressed the belief that the United States should stay until the fight was finished. First, trust, then support. But support eventually eroded. The Vietnam War was being handled very badly. On top of that, our leaders continued the war even after they realized that we couldn't win. But the worst mistake of all was that McNamara and President Johnson weren't honest with the American people about it. And because trust is the foundation of leadership, it ultimately destroyed the administration's leadership. In his book, In Retrospect, McNamara recounts that he repeatedly minimized American losses and told only half-truths about the war. For example, he says, "Upon my return to Washington from Saigon on December 21st, 1963, I was less than candid when I reported to the press. I said, 'We observed the results of a very substantial increase in Viet Cong activity.' True. But I then added, 'We reviewed the plans of the South Vietnamese and we have every reason to believe they will be successful.' An overstatement at best." For a while, nobody questioned McNamara's statement because there was no reason to mistrust the country's leaders. But in time, people recognized that his word and the facts weren't matching up. And that's when the American public began to lose faith. Years later, McNamara admitted his failure. We of the Kennedy and Johnson administration who participated in the decisions on Vietnam acted according to what we thought were the principles and traditions of this nation. We made our decisions in light of those values. Yet we were wrong, terribly wrong. By then it was too late. Many would argue that McNamara's admission came 30 years and 58,000 lives too late. The cost of Vietnam was high, and not just in human lives. As the American people's trust in their leaders deteriorated, so did their willingness to follow them. Protests led to open rebellion and to society-wide turmoil. The era that had begun with the hope and idealism characterized by John F. Kennedy ultimately ended with the mistrust and cynicism associated with Richard Nixon. Whenever a leader breaks the law of solid ground, he pays a price in his leadership. McNamara and President Johnson lost the trust of the American people, and their ability to lead suffered as a result. Eventually, McNamara resigned as Secretary of Defense. Johnson, the consummate politician, recognized his weakened position, and he didn't run for re-election. But the repercussions of broken trust didn't end there. The American people's distrust for politicians had continued to this day. No leader can break trust with his people and expect to keep influencing them. Trust is the foundation of leadership. Violate the law of solid ground, and you diminish your influence as a leader. Applying the law of solid ground to your life. Number 1. How trustworthy would your followers say you are? How can you measure their trust? By how open they are with you? Do they openly share opinions with you, even negative ones? Do they give you bad news as readily as good news? Do they let you know what's going on in their areas of responsibility? If not, they may not trust your character. How about your colleagues and your leader? Do they consistently put their trust in you? How do you measure their trust? By how much responsibility they entrust to you. If you regularly carry weighty responsibilities, that is a good sign that you are trustworthy. If not, then you need to find out whether they doubt your competence or your character. Number 2, most high achievers spend time developing their professional skills. They seek to be highly competent. Fewer focus on their character. What are you currently doing to develop your character? I recommend that you focus on 3 main areas: integrity, authenticity, and discipline. To develop your integrity, make a commitment to yourself. Make a commitment to yourself to be scrupulously honest. Don't shave the truth. Don't tell white lies, and don't fudge numbers. Be truthful even when it hurts. To develop authenticity, be yourself with everyone. Don't play politics, role play, or pretend to be anything you're not. To strengthen your discipline, do the right thing every day regardless of how you feel. Number 3, if you have broken trust with others in the past, then your leadership will always suffer until you try to make things right. First, apologize to whomever you have hurt or betrayed. If you can make amends or restitution, then do so. And commit to work at re-earning their trust. The greater the violation, the longer it will take. The onus is not on them to trust. The onus is on you to earn it. And if you've broken trust at home, start there before working to repair professional relationships.